We're on Daf Dalet Amud Beis. That's where we turned yesterday. So we're on the top of Daf Dalet Amud Beis, and we're up to Ibois Emo. Actually, we did Ibois Emo. My mistake. We're up to Gabi Tzitzis. Gabi Tzitzis Nami. So let's see what Gabi Tzitzis Nami means. We're trying to explain why Rabbi Yehuda agrees that in Mishnah Torah we are Dorish Smuchim. We came to the conclusion on Daf Dalet Amud Aleph on the bottom that the reason why Rabbi Yehuda has Smuchin in Mishnah Torah is for one or two reasons. Either because of Mochach, or because of Mufna. And what that means is that sometimes in Mishnah Torah, there's a pasuk that's out of place. That's called Mochach. And sometimes in Mishnah Torah, you have a pasuk that's just a repetition of what we already had before. That's called Mufna. And the Gemara applies both of these reasons to the case of Lo Yigala Knaf Oviv, to explain and justify why Rabbi Yehuda holds that a man is not allowed to have a relationship with his father's anusa, meaning his father had a relationship with a woman outside of marriage. So either because Lo Yigala Knaf Oviv is superfluous, it doesn't add anything, or because Lo Yigala Knaf Oviv should be written in a different parsha, it's out of place. It belongs in Achrimos in the parsha of Arayos. Now, Gabi Tzitzis Nami. We want to know how Rabbi Yehuda would apply any of those two reasons, either Mochach or Mufli, to the Smuchin of Tzitzis. In Tzitzis, we said that because the Torah starts with Lo Silbat Shatnez in Dvarim Perikov Beis, and then it goes on to Gedilim Tassel to teach you that in the case of Tzitzis, there's no Iser Kilayim, meaning you can tie a Tzitzis of Tzemer onto a Beged Shel Pishta. And the Gemara now is going to apply the two principles or the two logically compelling arguments to this case of the Smuchin of Shatnez and Tzitzis. Both of these logical rules could apply in the case of Kilayim B'Tzitzis. Which means that it is it is out of place. Mochach means it doesn't belong in Mishnah Torah, it belongs in some earlier framework or context. The Imkain, because if the Torah was not interested in Smuchim, why did it place Tzitzis here in Dvarim Chav Beis next to Shatnez? Lichlei Rachmana, the Torah should have written Gedilim Tassel on a different parsha. Gabi Ikar Parshas Tzitzis, which we'll read this Shabbos at the end of Parsha Shlach. So just like we said in the case of Lo Yigala Knaf Oviv, Rabbi Yehuda concedes that we are Dorish Smuchim because Lo Yigala Knaf Oviv is a prohibition that belongs in the parsha of Arayos in Achrimos. And what's it doing here in Mishnah Torah? So too, the mitzvah of Gedilim Tassel belongs not here in Mishnah Torah, but rather in Shlach, in the parsha of Tzitzis.
That's what it says.
Oh, so that's going to be the second answer of Mufti. But right now we're focused on Mochach.
Mochach doesn't make any sense.
Why?
Because
you don't like Mochach?
You're saying that it says almost the same words. It says the berries of Surah Tzitzit. Don't pass it. Not the same word.
All right. Well, we'll see. You're right, but what's happening is that you're sort of overlapping both of these rules, meaning we want to separate each rule. One rule is what's it doing here? It doesn't belong here. It's out of place. Meaning there is a parsha of tzitzis. Why did the Torah set up tzitzis as a mitzvah here in Sefer Dvarim? So if you're going to answer to me, well, we already have the mitzvah of tzitzis in Bamidbar, right, in Parshas Shlach, then I'm going to answer you, well, that's going to be the second approach of mufne. But mochach means that I can certainly convince you that it's out of place. Again, why was it placed here in the context of Kilayim? The Torah went out of its way to place the mitzvah of tzitzis next to Kilayim, and the answer is to teach me that there's no Kilayim in the case of tzitzis. That's called smooth. So 1 second. Mufne. I see. All right, so maybe Mitch, your question is a good question. I don't know. Let's see if we just at least get by, simple pshat in the Gemara. Another reason that compels Rabbi Yehuda to concede that we validate smuchin is because of michdi. Now the Gemara is going to try to analyze why this is mufne, michdi, kosav, and now we're going to open up Parshas Kedoshim. In Vayikra Yutes, it says, "Ubeged kilayim shatnez lo yalel alecha." And now we look here in Parshas Kiteitzei in Varam Chav Beis, and it says, "Lo silba shatnez tzemer upishtin yachtov." So therefore, once we have ubege kilayim shatnez, then why do we need lo silba shatnez? But again, your question is still outstanding. Why did the Gemara didn't ask about the repetition of tzitzis? Yeah, I don't know. I don't have an answer to that question yet. But what the Gemara is saying is that we have a repeat of the Isa Kilayim. Why did the Torah repeat the Isa Kilayim unless it wanted to put the Isa Kilayim next to the mitzvah tzitzis to limit the mitzvah Kilayim and tell you that in the case of tzitzis, there is no Isa Kilayim. So these are the two logical rules that justify smuchin even according to Rabbi Yehuda. Meaning, when we get to the other chumashim, so we'll say ein mukdum u'muchar b'Torah, and the sequence is not compelling because sometimes you have psukim that are out of order. But when we get to Mishnah Torah, there you cannot apply the principle of ein mukdum u'muchar b'Torah because Moshe Rabbeinu's nevuah was written and presented in a certain specific order. But what you could ask are one of two questions. Is the Torah placing something in a context which is not our first choice, meaning we're not comfortable, it would intuitively belong in a different context, in one of the other four chumashim, that's called mocha. Or we can be perturbed by another question, and that is, why is the Torah B'klal repeating what we already know from one of the other chumashim? And therefore, we're going to come to the conclusion that Moshe Rabbeinu deliberately attached A next to B in Mishnah Torah in order to darshan smuchin. And this is a compelling logic of smuchin because when Moshe Rabbeinu deliberately did this because he's repeating what we already know, or he's taking something totally out of context, he must be placing it or repeating it for a very specific, definite, deliberate reason, and that's going to be darshan smuchin. And that's Rabbi Yehuda in Mishnah Torah. Now, the problem with mufne, the second rule, is that now you're open up to the following kind of logical dissection, if you will. We're going to analyze the question of, is it really unnecessary? And we're going to look carefully at the two psukim and notice at least the nuance of the difference, right? So if we go back to the original Isser Kilayim, there the Torah says, Ubeged Kilayim Shatnes Lo Ya'aleh. Here in the Mishnah Torah formulation, it says Lo Silva Shatnes. In other words, Kilayim, when you wear Kilayim, you can wear it in one of two ways. You can describe it either as Lo Silvash, that's our pasuk here in Mishnah Torah that we're darshaning speaking, or instead of using the word Levisha, you could talk about Yala, that you put it on top of your body. And there's got to be some deliberate reason why the Torah chose these two different descriptions or terms, Beged Kilayim Shatnes Lo Yala Lecha, and then Lo Silva Shatnes. In the first case, in Parshas Kedoshim, there's no mention of Levisha, but rather Ola Lechem. In the second case, in Parshas Kitese, it says Lo Silvach. Obviously, the Torah is telling me something new, and again, we can go in both directions. Like we need this pasuk of Lo Yala Lechem, we need this pasuk of Lo Silvach, but that's going to undermine and torpedo this whole concept of mufna as it applies here, because it's not mufna at all. We needed to tell me the chidushim. So that's what the Gemara analyzes now. Hani mitzvah strichi. We need both psukim. You can't tell me that one is redundant. De'ikas of Rachman. If we only had the pasuk in Parshas Kedoshim, Beged Kilayim Shatnes Lo Yale Olecha. Avamin, I would have said, Kol Derech Allah Asar Achmana Filu Mochrei Ksus. Now let's leave out Mochrei Ksus for a moment. Obviously, we're going to have a lot of discussion here about Mochrei Ksus, but I just want to talk a minute about the skeleton, the structure, the logical structure that the Gemara is applying here. The Gemara is going to say the following, that we have two extremes, two different definitions of what is the Isser, what is being prohibited here with regard to wearing kilayim. Two polar extremes, one l'chumra and one l'kula. And the reason why the Torah confuses us, so to speak, by using these two definitions is because the truth is somewhere in the middle. And we're familiar with this. Again, if this will ring any bell from the fourth grade, whenever you learn Gemara for the first time, if you happen to have learned Elam Mitzias the way we did, so there's Kiyitain Dumya to Kiyutan, if you remember, right? So in terms of what's called a Machshir L'Kabel Tuma, the Torah has a Kriya and a Ksiv, and they're two polar extremes, and the truth is going to be in the middle. One Kiyitain means he has to take the fruit and deliberately, actively submerge it into a liquid, one of the 7 liquids. And the other say kiyutan, which means that even if it falls, it falls from Shamayim, it comes out of the tree, with a wind, and it falls into water, that's enough to be machshir, or any of the children. And the Gemara is going to say there that it's got to be kiyutan, but dumya the kiyutan, to eat it. And we're going to find that middle of the road, which means you didn't actively put it in the liquid, but you were very aware and satisfied with the fact that it got wet. When the dew came down, that's beneficial for your grains, for your fruits. If you followed me, I'm just giving you one example of many where the Torah will give me two extreme antithetical definitions in order to indicate that you need elements of both, and the truth lies somewhere in the middle. So now we're going to take a look at the big chumrah here of the pasuk in Kedoshim, where the Torah says Lo Yale Olecha, and Lo Yale Olecha tells me even something like Mochrei Ksus. That also would involve a violation of the Isser Kilayim. So Mochrei Ksus are garment sellers, and they go from place to place, apparently by foot in this case, or maybe there's not enough room on the wagon, so they wear some of their garments on their body, and that's how they present them to potential buyers. Now, they're allowed to sell shatnez to a guy, To a Jew, it's a problem. There's no Isur Hana in Kilayim, but if you sell it to a Jew, you might be violating Lifnei Iver. So we're looking to sell it to Goyim, and we present it to Goyim when you wear this garment, and they see, how beautiful it is, how warm it is, and hopefully they'll buy it. Okay, so that's a case of halah alecha. What do you mean halah alecha? He has no interest in really wearing this beged. He needs a method of transportation to get from place to place, from shtetl to shtetl, to sell his wares, to sell his, garments in this case. So if you take a look at Rashi, 3 lines down from the top, there's going to be a very, very important Rashi for us. Rashi says, Mochrei ksus, she'ein miskavnim la'nos chimum. Normally, you wear a garment in order to warm your body. He's not interested in warming his body. He's just transporting it from place to place. So again, we're going to have a long discussion about this Rashi. Rashi puts all the emphasis in Mochrei ksus on the absence of kavanah. Rashi doesn't seem to be denying that he does get some benefit from it. Maybe it's a rainy season or a cold season, and it helps warm up his body, even though he has garments underneath his top garment. But nevertheless, he doesn't have kavanah. Okay, fine. Again, that's a long discussion we'll get to in about 5 minutes from now. Oh, so now let's go to the other extreme. And let's now invoke the pasuk here in Parshas Ki Teitzei, Kosav Rachmana lo silbash shatnes, dumya de levisha de isbei hana. So if we take the pasuk lo silbash shatnes, it's telling me gavaldik chiddush, in contrast to the pasuk in Parshas Kedoshim, which says Begin Kilayim. Lo yalel. Have to remember those words. Now, again, the Gemara says the isbei hana, meaning levisha has hana in it. According to Rashi, we'd have to add maybe one word to the Gemara. The miskaven bei hana, that he has kavanah to have hana. That's what levisha is all about. And your paradigm in case of levisha, your abstract definition of levisha means that you want to get some benefit. Otherwise, why are you wearing this beged? Now again, what exactly is this hana? Rashi is going to say it's hana shel chimum, that it warms up your body in the cold weather. Again, we're going to see other Rishonim might have a broader definition of hisbei hana. There are other benefits that you get from wearing clothing. Lav dafka chimum. Okay, fine. Well, now the question is, when the Torah says lo silbash, is it going too much to the other extreme? Ikasa rachmana lo silbash, meaning if we only add the pasuk lo silbash that we have here in Mishnah Torah, Havamin, I would have said, the Torah's Isur is very, very limited. Dafka levisha dinafish hadiyosa. We need, let's call it a grade A levisha. Aval halah, let's say a person does halah, but not mochrei ksus of halah. It's the middle of the road case of halah, where he gets a certain element of hana from wearing this beged. It's not just wearing it to transport it and to show it to his buyers. But on the other hand, he's not getting a full-fledged hana of grade A hana. So what is this middle case where it's halah, but it's not halah? It's levisha, but it's not levisha. It's some sort of combination of halah plus levisha. And here I want to quote to you the Meiri. The Meiri writes, Kigon mitpachos sefeg hasuyos listapik me. And again, I hope I'm not misreading misunderstanding the Meiri, but I think what he's referring to are towels. So imagine if you had let's dramatize. You have a very large bath towel, and it's shatnez. You get out of the shower and you want to dry yourself with this large bath towel. So on the one hand, it's not levisha, it's halah, but on the other hand, it has an element of levisha to it. Why? Because his body is benefiting from the fact that he wraps himself around in this towel, in this aluntis. What does he call it? Mitpachas. Yeah, I'm thinking out loud. Maybe according to the Meiri, towels would be a problem. I don't know. Is there such a thing as buying towels with a hechsher on it that says no shatnez? I mean, I get most towels are made of cloth, so there's no shatnez. But let's say, in some fancy country, some rich, community, they make towels out of a combination of linen and wool. Maybe that would be a problem. I don't know. Maybe that would be called halah because it covers his hands. I'm avoiding all these issues. I just want to get the basic structure of the Gemara. The Gemara is saying that you're telling me Mufna and Rabbi Yehuda will agree to limit Kilayim in the case of tzitzis and Darshan Smuchim because it's in Mishnah Torah, because it's Mufna. We already have the Iser of Ubeged Kilayim Shatnis Lo Yala Alecha in Parshas Kedoshim. Why do we need Lo Silba Shatnis here in Parshas Kitetse in Sefer Dvarim? And the answer is, I hate to tell you, buddy, it's not Mufna at all. We need both psukim, because one pasuk prohibits halah even without levisha. The other prohibits levisha dafka to the exclusion of halah, where it doesn't cover his body. And now, by taking these two formulations into conjunction, I come up with a middle definition. I need a halah sheyesh bo levisha, meaning there's some hanas levisha. I'm covering my body and I'm benefiting from that covering of my body, even though I'm not wearing it as a beggar. So it's halah on my body. It's not levisha on my body. But on the other hand, it has an element of levisha, as opposed to the extreme case of mochei ksus, where there was no unknown. Here, he's definitely benefiting from. So don't tell me that it's mufna. So the Gemara says now that, you know what, we're going to take our pasuk here in Dvarim, Lo Silba Shatnes, and we're going to take it apart, piece by piece, word by word. You're right. I can't deny that we need the pasuk Lo Silba Shatnes to tell me that halah of mochei ksus is not included in the Isser. So this pasuk of Lo Silbash is going to offset and mitigate or neutralize to some extent the extreme formulation of the Isa climb of halah. That I admit. So we need this pasuk. It's not mufta in that sense, but we don't need the entire pasuk. We're going to be very picky about it, and we're going to try to truncate this pasuk and derive the exact conclusion that you want to derive from the pasuk with extra words. So there are going to be superfluous words in this pasuk. Again, I'm just trying to get the structure of the Shakla V'Tari of the Gemara. Imkain, meaning if you're going to deny smuchim, and you're going to tell me that the only reason the Torah is justified to repeat Lo Silba Shatnes Tzeru, Tzeru Pishtin, Lo Silba Shatnes Tzeru Pishtin Yaakov is in order to teach me that halah of mochei ksus is not included in the Isur, is then you could have accomplished that goal with a lot fewer words. Lichtov Rachmana Lo Silba Shatnes. Okay, Lo Silba Shatnes. Do I know what Shatnes is? Okay, so right now the Gemara is assuming I have a dictionary, a biblical dictionary, a biblical halachic dictionary, and I look up the word Shatnes. And Shatnes means semer and fishta. You can think of combinations of all sorts of different kinds of fibers and threads different species. How do you know that shatnez applies exclusively to a combination of wool and linen? But the Gemara assumes that we know that up front. So when it says Osil b'shatnez, that's all I have to know. And therefore, the end of the pasuk, Semer ufishtim lamal. The Torah didn't have to specify that's redundant. And therefore, if it's redundant, Rabbi Yehuda has mufna, he checks off that box, and he admits and concedes to the Chachamim that we're darshaning smuchin to whittle down the Isa Kalayim, such it doesn't apply in the case of tzitzit. That seems to be, if I'm not mistaken, the general structure of this Gemara. Now, if you'll ask me, how do I know which birdie whispers into my ear that shatnez equals semer ufishtin? Michti. Kosav, with regard to Allah, the Torah says, "Ubeged kilayim shatnez lo yale olech." And the emphasis now is going to be on the opening word in this pasuk in Parshas Kedoshim, beged. Now again, if you ask me what a beged is, I'll give you a million different options. But in the biblical halachic dictionary, the lexicon, beged means, get this, semer upishtim. That's what a beged is. How do I know this? From Tana de Rabbi Shimon. Now, in order to appreciate Tana de Rabbi Shimon, we really have to take out a chumash and go through a parsha which is called Nigei Begadin, a kind of tumas tsaras in Begadin. Kasa, in the pasuk here in Kedoshim, with regard to the Yisrael Halaw, it says, "Ubeged kilayim shatnez lo yal alecha." Tana de Rabbi Shimon, hoil v'nemru b'Torah. Stam begadim. In other words, in various contexts in the Torah, you'll see the word begadim or beged in the singular, and the Torah doesn't bother specifying exactly what are the materials that make up this beged. So we have to find one case in the Torah where the Torah tells us specifically what constitutes a beged, meaning the Torah has to reveal in one context what a beged is. And once you've defined the materials that make up a beged, then wherever it says the word beged in the Torah, then ipso facto, we define it by that one case. So we need one parsha. Part l'cha kosav b'yechamer, and we're going to find that in the parsha Nigei Batin, the Torah uses the word beged, and then semer upishtin, the Torah spells it out explicitly that it's semer upishtin. So let me read the pasuk to you. This is in Vayikra Perek Yud Gimel. What would that be? Shmini? I don't know where that is. And it says, "Va'beged." That's probably Tazria. "Va'beged yebo negat saras." Okay, so it opens up with the word beged, and we're talking about saras. And then it says, "The beged semer o beged pishtan." Now again, we're not combining semer pishtan. That's a different parsha. That's shatnez. But if you ask me what kind of a beged is included in Tumas Negoyim, then the Torah specifies it's one of two. The word beged here in this context means either a beged of tzemer or a beged of pishtan. That's not a chiddush. I don't need Torah Shebal Peh for that. That's explicit in the Torah Shebal. So if the Torah says that a beged means either a beged of tzemer or a beged of pishtan, then now we're going to plug this in to the word kilayim. Kilayim means a combination of two different meanings. Is af kol, wherever the Torah uses the word gadim, anywhere in the Torah, and it doesn't specify, we can assume it's tzemer pishtan, which means that if the Torah says kilayim shatnez lo yala alecha, it means that you have a kilayim of two different kinds of gadim. One kind of beged is a beged shel tzemer, the other is a beged shel pishtan, and you combine it. That's called kilayim. But you ended up with a beged. So the Torah says, "Who beged kilayim shatnez lo yala alecha." Again, I don't know why it has to say both kilayim and shatnez. That's a different issue. I don't think that's relevant to us today. What's relevant to us is that since the Torah says Beged Kilayim, Beged means either Pishton and Semer, Kilayim means the combination thereof, Lo Yaleh Alecha, and then at the end of the same pasuk, after it says Beged Kilayim Shatnis Lo Yaleh Alecha, immediately it says, I'm sorry, my mistake. Now we fast forward to our parsha here in Mishnah Torah, Parshas Ki Tetzei, and the pasuk says, "Lo silba shatnes severu pishtan yachtam." Why does it have to tell me severu pishtan? Severu pishtan because of Rachmana. In the pasuk Lo silba shatnes, it says severu pishtan. Is why do I need this? Lamali. We already know that the word shatnes, in the case of a beged, is a reference to tzemeru pishtan yachtov, shma minolach nuye. So the only thing that really changed here structurally is that we thought originally that the entire pasuk in Sefer Dvarim, in Parshas Ki Tetzei, is Ibrik, is what you call it, is super unnecessary, it's mufne. No, we're whittling it down. The pasuk itself has to teach me levicha to counter halah in the original Parshas Kedoshim, but we did not, and the Torah had no need to specify semeru pishtan. And that itself gives me mufna. I don't need mufna on the entire pasuk, as long as I have mufna on part of the pasuk. And therefore, Rabbi Yehuda agrees that you've now checked off his requirement of mufna in Sefer Dvarim, and we can darshan. Well, it still is not happy. Vakata Yitzter. Even though Stam Beged certainly means either Pishtan or Tzemer, and therefore Shatnes would mean the combination thereof, Tzemer and Pishtan, I still need the words Tzemer and Pishtan. So let me try to take a shot. Again, I'm not trying to plagiarize. I saw this Gemara, but sometimes you see a Gemara and you forget it. So it's like you started from the beginning. So I'm going to try to suggest what the Gemara is about to pull off here in order to insist that we need Semer Upishtan in this pasuk. We have two Isur. We have Levisha grade A, and we have Levisha grade B. Levisha grade B is that middle case, right? That Shvil HaZahav, that compromise case of Halah with the towel, without the other extreme of Mochrei Ksus. And now we have to analyze the following question. Now that we have two categories of Isa Kalayim, one is called Levisha grade A, Levisha Gemura, and the other is Halah, where the body benefits from Halah. Could it be possible that these are two different dinim? And we're going to present the following Havamina. Again, if this is all what I'm telling you is just a Havamina, but to insist that we need the Torah to specify Tzemeru Pishtan. Because if the Torah hadn't specified Tzemeru Pishtan, I would have taken two different parshios and I would have generated two different categories of Isurim with an Afkamina between them. The parsha in Kedoshim is the parsha of Halah. And Beged Shatnes, in the context of Halah, requires a mixture of Tzemeru Pishtan. But here in Parshas Ki Tetzei, if the Torah had omitted the words Tzemeru Pishtan, we would have assumed that Levisha, which is a grade A and a more stringent violation of Kalayim, would apply not only to Tzemeru Pishtan, but the Torah is broadening the definition of a Beged with regard to the Isa Kalayim. And that the words in the Torah Lo Silba Shatnes without Semer Pishtan, without the Sefer, we would take it to an extreme. And we would say Lo Silba Shatnes is telling me that even if it doesn't qualify as a beged, according to your universal definition of a beged, which we derived, if you remember, from Tumas Negoyim, where the Torah says beged and it says semer or pishtan. So now we're not talking about that beged. The Torah says lo silva shatnez. What is shatnez? Shatnez is a combination of two meaning. And it might be any two meaning. Bishlem, if we go back to the original parsha in Kedoshim Beged Kilayim, it says Beged. And when it says Beged, it means that with regard to Halah, which is again a secondary kind of Levisha, it's not grade A, it's grade B. Here, we're going to be very limited in terms of the scope of the Isur Kilayim. It's only going to apply in Semru Pishtan, and that's why the Torah opens up that verse with the word Beged, referring to the Beged in Vayikra Yud Gimel in the parasha of Nigei God. But here, that the Torah is talking about in the Levisha, which is a much more severe Isur, because he's really benefiting from it. It's a cold winter day, and he's wearing his parker, and it's covering his body and warming him, and it's got two different meaning in it. The Torah here doesn't say Beged, it just says Lo Silva Shatnez. And I might think that Shatnez now, in the context of this Itzer Chomer of Levisha Gemura, of grade A Levisha, is a broader scope that would include any two meaning. So he combines a silk with wool or silk with linen. I don't know, whatever list you have. Let's see if this is what the Gemara has in mind. If not, forget everything I just said. He says, Akati Itzer, Salkedai Techamina, Halahi de lo nafish hana asa. He's getting a very limited benefit. He comes out of the shower and he wants to wipe himself. How long is it going to take him to wipe himself? He's not running around wearing it like if it was a bathrobe, you go to the, I don't know today, but in the old days, you go to the fancy hotels, and if you get a good upgrade in the hotel, they give you a bathroom, or one for you, one for your wife, right? So you're going to walk around go down to the pool in the bathroom. That's Levicha Mamash. That's Nafish Hanasa. But we're talking about a towel. So it's not Nafish Hanasa. It's only Halah. Again, it's a Halah Sheyesh Ba'ano. It's not the Halah of Mochrik Sus, who's not interested at all in warming his body. He's just moving from place to place. But we're talking about someone who's not just draping himself with a beged of shatnez. He's drying himself off with a beged of shatnez. That's hanoah, but it's not hanoah meruba. It's not nafish hanoah also. It's therefore the Torah says, you know what? Kilayim means a combination of the two classic begadim, meaning the beged of tzemer and the beged of pishtim. That's what he combines. Avo, levisha. If he's wearing a full-fledged, set of apparel, of clothing. Nafish hanoah, he's getting a lot of hanoah. Again, the emphasis here is always on the hanoah. From Kilayim, maybe, perhaps, kol trei mini, any two meaning that are combined together. Asar Achman. We're not limited to Tzemer Pishta. Asav Rachmana, now I need the two words Severu Pishtan. So don't tell me that these two words make it mufta. It's not mufta at all. Because with regard to Levisha, I have to know that the Isur Levisha is limited to Severu Pishtan, because I would have raised the possibility that any two meaning, once you combine them and you mix them, that itself generates the Isur of Levisha Shat. So Rabbi said, look, I admit to you, this is not, Reb Chaim Brisker Lumbus here, but to me, this is challenging. I get a lot of benefit out of this. I enjoy, sometimes when you have a shakavatariya, just figuring out the logic of the Gemara is enough of a challenge for me. So, All right. Now the Gemara comes back and says, I have an answer for you. I don't need the words Tzemer Upishtan. Why? In Cain, Lishto Kra Mine. Vitese Shatnes Mehallah. You're telling me that there are tzvei dinim. There are two categories of shatnes with nafkaminas between them. I can't accept it because of the principle called Gzeira Shava. We have a Gzeira Shava, shatnes. So let's see. Again, we'll read the two psukim. In the case of Kedoshim, Parshas Kedosh, Vayikru Yutes, it says Ubeged Kilayim, and then I asked you, why did the Torah add the word shatnes? I mean, you called it Kilayim. What does shatnes add? The answer is shatnes now becomes like a key word. What phrase am I looking for? It's a code word for Gzeira Shava. Because we open up now, fast forwarding to Parshas Kitetse in Dvarim Ychaf Beis, and again, Lo Silbach Shatnes. And therefore, says the Gemara, the fact that we have a Gzeira Shava between Shatnes and Shatnes tells me that whatever limitation you're going to apply to one of these two categories, ipso facto you apply to the other category. So when you have a halah, which again, in light of the pasuk Lo Silbash, we're interpreting halah in a toned down way, right? It's the halah not of Mochrik Sus, but the halah of the mitpachos that we mentioned in the name of the Me'im. But there we're saying that for sure it only applies in a beged. And what's a beged is Tzemer Upishtan. Then by definition, ipso facto, the same limitation of the scope of Kalayim applies even with regard to the full-fledged Levisha. Why is that so? Because of the Gzeira Shava, Shatnei Shat. And now we have a question, why then did the Torah need to add the words Tzemer Upishtan? They are totally redundant unless we have mufna for the purpose of smuchim. If Cain lichto kramine, the Torah did not have to specify Tzemer Upishtan as the tarovis. The Teisei, and I'll derive the limitation principle that the tarovis here is Tzemer Upishtan because of Shatnes Mehallah. With regard to Levisha here in Kitetse, it says Lo Silbash Shatnes. And in Halah, in Parshas Kedoshim, it says Beged Kilayim Shatnes Lo Yal Alechem, and it says Shatnes. Ma Shatnes Behalah Eino Elo B'Tzemer Upishtan, Af Shatnes B'Levisha Eino Elo B'Tzemer Upishtan. So once again, the Torah could have completely dropped the two words Tzemer Upishtan, and we would certainly know that the Issa Levisha applies only exclusively to a tarovis of Tzemer Upishtan based on the Gzeira Shava Shatnes Shatnes, and therefore these two words Tzemer Upishtan are mufna to allow us to darshan smuchim, even according to Rabbi Yehuda, and to be matir kilayim bitzis. Now, we're not finished with this sugya, but since the sugya goes on and on, I want to take a pause now and focus on that Rashi, which is here 3 lines down from the top of the Omid. She'ein miskavnim la'noas chim. Now, the reason why this Rashi, ein miskavnim la'noas chimum, is going to occupy the minds of the Rishonim and the Achronim, Biz Mashiach, is because of a sugya p'sachim. So what we're looking at here in Masechet Yevamot is like the tip of the iceberg. The real sugya of Mochei Ksus is in Masechet Psachim. And if I'm not mistaken, we had an occasion right here in this room to learn that sugya. And that's the sugya of Isurei Hana. You may remember Chizkiah and Rabbi Avo. When the Torah prohibits Achila, does it include Hana or not? Does that ring a bell? Chafei, Psachim Chafei. So in the context of that sugya, on Chafayim and Beis, the Gemara in Psachim quotes a Mishnah in the 9th parak of Kilayim. And that Mishnah allows Mochrei Ksus to wear shatnez. The Gemara in Psachim, after quoting that Mishnah in Kilayim, says that heter, the leniency of that Mishnah, reflects the unique shita Rabbi Shimon against Rabbi Yehuda. Now, Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda have this massive machlokas, as you know, throughout Shas, about a davar she'eino miskam. When a person violates an avera and he doesn't have kavan. In the case of Mochrei Ksus, the Gemara claims he's not miskaven for levisha. He's just miskaven to transport the beged as he wears it. I always remind myself of a little book, very famous book, I forgot the name of it, that we used to read to our children. Remember the guy with all the apps? What's it called? I know, Bartholomew, I think, is Dr. Seuss. This is even before Seuss, I think. It's the prehistoric children's books, one cap on top of the other. It's a very cute book. Anyway, so he's not miskaven, for levisha. He's not trying to protect or warm up his body. That's not his interest. He's trying to just get it from place to place to present it to his buyers. So the Gemara says that question of Mochrei Ksus depends upon the machlokes between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda. And the Gemara says now that why do we need the pasuk here in Kitetse, Lo silba shatnes, lafuke, the pasuk, the simple reading of the pasuk in Parshas Kedoshim. Because in Parshas Kedoshim, the Torah says, Lo yalo lechem. Am I correct? I don't have to look for the pasuk every 5 minutes, right? Lo yalo lechem, which would mean that even Mochrei Ksus, if they wear shatnez, violate the Isur. So all the Rishonim, Pe'ef, the Ramban, the Rashba, the Ritva, the whole slew of Rishonim, they ask, according to Rashi, what's the Havamina to say that on Halah you'd be chayav? It's a davar she'eino miskaven. And we paskin like Reb Shimon against Rabbi Yehuda, so that the heter of Mochrei Ksus is, according to the Sugi Psachim, a reflection of the shita of Shimon in Kol HaTorah that davar she'eino miskaven is mutter, and therefore our Gemara seems to be antithetical to Rabbi Shimon. We paskin like Reb Shimon, but Reb Shimon says davar she'eino miskaven is mutter, and now you're telling me that Mochrei Ksus would be violating the Isur Kilayim, again, if not for the other pasuk in Parshas Kitetse, which says Lo Silbash, but if we only had the pasuk in Parshas Kedoshim, where it says Lo Yala Alecha, we would have assumed that a Mochrei Ksus situation is prohibited. How can we even entertain such an idea? We accept Reb Shimon, hook, line, and sinker. Davar she'eino miskaven is mutter. So I'll read to you the language here. The Masechet is summarizing the Ramban. Madua amru kan she'ilu le'a mikra. If not for the pasuk here in Parshas Kitetse, hava mina shegam Mochrei Ksus. Afal gav di eino miskavdim lanos chimum asurim b'levishas beged shel kilayim harei halacha kaimalon shedavar she'eino miskaven mutar ki Rabbi Shimon. Upashudim came, she'ena mikra ba lesser davar she'eino miskaven. I mean, again, you could say, let's take this pasuk and completely reject Rabbi Shimon. We're not willing to do that, says the Ramban. We accept Rabbi Shimon. Davar she'eino miskaven is mutter. We have this, by the way, with regard to Mila B'Tzaras, or healing therapeutic methods of therapy that cause serous. And again, it's a Dover Sheni Miskab. There are many cases of Dover Sheni Miskab. I mean, I'm mentioning just two of them, but we pass like Reb Shimon. So the Ramban is not willing to say that this pasuk is coming to teach me that Dover Sheni Miskab is awesome. That's an untenable position. Oh, furthermore, caution. The whole sugi is about Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda concedes that in Mishnah Torah we are Doresh Smuch. So the ganze sugi from beginning to end is according to Rabbi Yehuda. Ulashitaso, Dover Sheni Miskam, also. The Leslie Cloud did shall Mochrik Sus. This whole heter Mochrik Sus, which is presumed in our Gemara, is against Rabbi Yehuda. Because Rashi tells us that's what is Mochrik Sus? Rewrite the text. Mochrik Sus equals Dover Sheni Miskam. Eino Miskam Lanos Chib. Talk about Rabbi Yehuda. There is no heter of Mochrik Sus. The Gemara in Pesachim says that the mission of Kilayim that allows Mochrik Sus is Aliba reflects the Shita of Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda would prohibit Mochrik Sus. And yet the whole sugya from beginning to end is telling us that Mochrik Sus is mutter. Why? Because he's Eino Miskamen. Again, we have to invoke the pasuk of Lo Silbash, which according to Reb Shimon, we don't know why we need Lo Silbash here in Parshas Eitzei, but be that as it may, I have another question to ask you. Wherever you derive this conclusion, I don't care how you rack your brains, but the conclusion is that Mochrik Sus is mutter. This sugi is going according to Rabbi Yehuda. You're telling me that Mochrik Sus Rashi is mutter because Eino Miskamen Lanos Chimum. Rabbi Yehuda holds Dover Sheni Miskamen is also. In fact, the Gemara Pesachim says that that's why the Mishnah in Kilayim that Matis Mochrik Sus is only Aliba de Rabbi Shimon, but according to Rabbi Yehuda, Mochrik Sus is also. And our sugi assumes that Mochrik Sus is mutter. Why? How? It's Rabbi Yehuda. Now, take a deep breath. Comes along the Ramban, and he says we have to forget about Rashi, leave out Rashi. We have to reinterpret the sugi. El, yesh lefar. So now the Ramban is after. Okay, very nice. A tirade against Rashi. But now, don't just be destructive. Now, pick up the sugya, the piece of the sugya, put it all together. Right? Humpty Dumpty. You got to put it all together. He writes the following. We're talking about Mochrik Sus in a totally different way. We're talking about Mochrik Sus b'yamos hacham. I mean, it doesn't say that in our Gemara. This is what I call an ukimta. But the Ramban says, based on the fact that he's trying to square this sugya off with Rabbi Yehuda, Dover Sheni Miskamen is also, that Mochrik Sus is during the summertime. The Eino Menim Klal Mi Levisha Zu. The issue is not did he have kavanah to enjoy the levisha, but is there b'mitzias any hana? Not that he had, not the way Rashi formulates it. Did he have kavanah for the hana? But was there hana? Eino menim klal mi levisha zu b'yamos hachama. And he adds v'yeshlo beged acher. He's not naked. It's not that he's only wearing. That's. What is Mochrik Sus trying to convey to us? First of all, why would a person put on a beged if it's 99 degrees hot outside? Unless he's Mochrik Sus. And secondly, he's not naked. He's only wearing it because he wants to show it to his potential buyers, his customers. Fully dressed, but he wears on top of it this, fur mink coat or something that he's trying to sell, and he's schwitzing like he's schwitzing bullets. He has no anos levisha whatsoever. Al zeh amru. Now let's see if we can plug this in, get the punchline here. This Ramban. Again, if we have time, I just haven't. I guess we don't have time today, but tomorrow, remind me. I want to defend Rashi. There's a beautiful Beis Halevi to put together Rashi. Says the Ramban, Im lo shenemar lo silva shatz, if not for our pasuk here in Parshas Ki Teitze Levisha, is salkadai techamina, since the Torah used the word halah in the original Isur in Parshas Kedoshim, af Levisha she'ein bahana asura. Uba hakosim kamashmalon lelamdenu she'ein iser elo belevisha sheyesh bahano. We are classifying and categorizing two levishas. There's a levisha sheyesh bahano and a levisha she'ein bahano. You know, it's almost as if, you know, I have a piece of lobster. I don't know. Somebody told me about Chuba that I can't imagine how good it tastes. I don't know. And to me, I don't know. It's just, I'm being very optimistic, but to me, lobster is something that it's repulsive. But the Torah says you're not allowed to eat lobster. Did I get hana from eating lobster or I didn't? Irrelevant. You're not allowed to eat lobster. It's a ma'isa achila and it's machalas asuros. Don't add hana as a precondition. Levisha. What did the Torah prohibit? Is it a levisha sheish b'hana or even a ma'isa levisha greda, a mechanical, dry cut and bones, you know, naked levisha? That's all I have is levisha. Did I benefit from this levisha? No, I mean, I'm schwitzing bullets. It's a levisha shein b'hana, but the Torah prohibits. And that's why the Torah used the word halah in Parshas Kedoshim, to broaden the definition of the Isser Kilayim to include even a levisha shein b'hana, and therefore Mochrei Ksus is us. And of course, even according to Rabbi Yehuda. But Kamash Malon and Rabbi Yehuda will be matir Mochrei Ksus Lemaskana in a case of Yemos Achama, because that's irrelevant to Kavana. There, the matir is it's not a levisha. What do you mean it's not a levisha? I put it on, I'm wearing it. You know, I tied all the buttons. But the answer is that Lo Silbash in the Parsha of Ki Teitze is coming to be machadish to me that I need a levisha sheyesh b'hana. And b'yemos hachama, this is a levisha sheyesh b'hana. And therefore it's mutter. And therefore, in this particular context of Mochrei Ksus b'yemos hachama, even Rabbi Yehuda would be matir, but that's derived from the pasuk in Parshas Teitze to offset the halah, meaning levisha sheyesh b'hana. Now, if Mochrei Ksus are wearing this beged during Yemos HaGeshamim, then there's Hana in that Ma'aseh Levisha. He's not interested in Hana. That'll be also according to Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda holds Umatum Dover Shenim is coming also, and Rabbi Shimon will be martyred because of Dover Shenim is coming. Wow, this is so abstract. Rashi is operating within the framework of Dover Shenim is coming, hence it's a machlokes of Yehuda of Shimon, and the Ramban is operating within the framework of two categorically different types of levisha. And we're asking, what did the Torah prohibit in levisha? Is it halah, which means a levisha she'ein bo hana, or is it a levisha sheyesh bo hana? And that's what the Gemara means when it says, I need the pasuk of Lo Silba Shatnis in the parsha of Ki Teitze, it's not mufna. And then the Gemara says, but Temru Bishna is mufna because we have the Gzeir Shov of Shatnis. Okay then? It's a beautiful signal. A great day with us.